Just about 6 o'clock. Time to begin the meeting. Welcome to all of you, and thank you all for making the meeting again this evening. I guess I have a couple of housekeeping chores going forward here. I got a message from Becky Conrad. She's going to be out of town this evening, actually this week, so she sends her apologies for not being able to attend. Kelly Butler won't be here because she has another important commitment as well this evening, so she has to attend to that. And also got an email from our member Virginia Keel. I reached out to her, hadn't seen her. So she explained to me that she works at the hospital, Central Maine Medical Center, and with the switch over, her schedule is very erratic and not predictable and long into the evening. So she suggested that she thought it would be best if she resigned from the committee because she didn't feel as though she could attend many more meetings because of that. So she did send, she told me, and I think she sent an email to the staff that she really appreciated and was pleased to be able to be serving, but felt it was best for the committee if she didn't continue. So Virginia has resigned from the committee. Some instructions from those higher up than I. Apparently, I've gotten some comments from the public that during the meeting, people who are listening online are having a little bit of a difficult time hearing some of us. So I would ask you to be diligent about bringing the mics close to you when you speak and try to speak in a little more public and stronger voice if you tend to have a weaker voice as well, so that they can hear what we're doing, proceedings. And last but certainly not least, I would be remiss if I didn't note that this is a very special day. Today is Jeff Harmon's birthday. So we were all very lucky that his parents brought him here and is sharing him with us. Happy birthday to you, Jeff. And you know, I couldn't hardly think of a better way to spend your birthday than at a meeting.
Wait a minute, I have to interject there. He signed a paper for me earlier today and he had to look up the date.
Well, he may not know what day it is on the calendar, but he does know he was born today. So, as we start as usual, we'll go around and just state your name so we know that you're here for the record. I'll start in a little different location. Phil, why don't I start with you and we can go down to the staff first.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
Carl Brown, Planning.
Lauren Cafe, Long Range Planner.
Ashley Aaron, Barry Dunn.
Allie Toby, Barry Dunn.
Rex Rhodes, Citizen.
Dennis Bergeron, committee member.
Pull it a little closer to you so it's handy.
Bruce Ryu.
Yeah, pull the speaker a little.
Jeff Hyman, Mayor.
Rick Whiting.
John Cleveland.
Dana Staples.
Paul Jacques.
Adam Lee.
Bilal Hussein.
Tim Cowan, there we go.
Riley Bergeron.
Jane Costlow.
Oh, and it just reminded me, I just remembered, that we have another very important thing for you to know. Apparently, I'm told by those who control things that from now on, we have to stay in the same seats that you choose to stay in. I don't know the reason for that. But apparently, we have to pick a seat and choose it. So I will take a moment, if anybody wants to trade seats, or maybe bribe somebody with a glass of beer or whatever, but if you don't change, this is where, next meeting, that's where you need to sit. Okay, so, with that, the next item of business is public comment. So it is about 6:05. I will open it up to anyone in the audience who would like to speak to us for a few minutes.
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. A couple of months ago, I encouraged members of the committee to go out and take a drive around many neighborhoods in this city, because this is a big city geographically, and it's got a lot of discrete neighborhoods and areas that your common path of travel may never take you to. So I encourage people to go out and take a look around and see what the city really looks like in all of its various locales. I hope you took advantage of that opportunity. Tonight, I'd like to suggest that you think in doing your land use map descriptions and boundaries to think three-dimensionally and not two-dimensionally just by looking at maps. If you did take some tours, think of all of the different elevations and neighborhoods, the two large bodies of water and other geographic features that we have in the city. I did a quick mental review, and I think that by far Auburn is the most topographically varied city in this state. It's got a lot of high places and some low ones, and there are lots of different types of topography and vegetation and other land use features that help to define different parts of the city. So in putting your maps and boundaries together, keep those factors in mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal.
Hi, Rudy Wing, 499 Penn Lake Corner Road. I'm here today to learn about how you guys are going to plan with restructuring, especially out by me in the ag area. Again, trying to help some veterans, so through your due diligence, please think of me. I know it seems like I'm a pain in the butt, but I'm trying to just do some good things for my veterans, and looking forward to working with staff. And I worked with the old staff, and I'm going to revisit with my business plan and see what I can do to make it and adjust it so that we can work together to finally get me on that property so I can help some veterans here in Auburn. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Seeing no other persons in the public, I just noted, and in my great excitement, I forgot to ask about the minutes. So, are there any corrections or errors in the minutes? I'll accept a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Minutes are unanimously accepted. The next item on the agenda is item 4, the future land use map descriptions. You will recall at our previous meeting, we went through the land use descriptions and made some suggestions and comments. I think that you saw in your packet both a marked up version of those corrections and a final version without the corrections. So, having reviewed those, do you have any further comments in regards to the land use category descriptions? I guess I do. And I think, so under compact residential, both under land use and density and form, we talk about the area being I think we're talking about it as we see it today. That would include one to four family homes. I did take Mr. Beal's suggestion seriously, and over the past week, I've driven around, and I actually couldn't find any four-family homes in the Comback residential area. So I'm wondering whether we need to adjust that at all. Certainly there are two-family, three-families. I saw those. Maybe I might have missed it, but it would have been hidden if I didn't find it. Alex?
This is in a high-growth area, so with state statute, city would have to allow for up to 4 units on properties that are in the high-growth area with water and sewer.
Oh, yeah, okay, let me, yeah, I'm sorry, just a minute. I was reading it as 4 stories, but it could be less than 4 stories and still have 4 units, yes. We do have to allow up to 4 units. All right, just so that's clear, it doesn't mean it's necessarily the height, just the number of units. Okay, that answers my question. Is there any further questions? Are you ready to adopt these land use categories?
John, I have a comment. Wow, I'm really close to that.
Oh.
A comment from staff, actually. If we look at the high-density core, staff was looking at the density and form, talking about a minimum of 4 stories. And there was question whether that would limit single-story businesses from moving into these areas and requiring them to have bottom floor commercial, upper floor residential, or so on. And we would still be able to, in the zoning, future zoning, allow for and encourage multi-story buildings and mixed use, but we're wondering if we should force that. And it's a staff recommendation to remove that minimum 4-story requirement.
Yes.
And look to zoning in the future based on the 3 different high-density cores.
Thank you, Lauren, for remembering to remind us of that. So as you remember, we have 3 areas of high growth core, the mall downtown here by Great Falls and over by the Turnpike. And I think as thought about it more, though we want to encourage more intense use in that area, I think we want to be careful, as you suggested, that we don't unintentionally rule out that there might be something less than a 4-story in that area, as we see now, a lot of chain restaurants and that kind of thing. So, what's your thought about maybe changing that language so we don't rule it out and we may be able to deal with it more in the zoning ordinance, where maybe a piece of that we would encourage it somehow? Yeah, Dana?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. One thing that I would maybe suggest adding, if we're going to remove the 4-story requirement, is to maybe give some sort of a carrot for incentivizing businesses that are more than 1 story. I'm not really sure that it's the appropriate place to list what that would be, but I think saying that that's the intention for any future zoning, I think would probably be appropriate.
Tim?
Thank you. Along those lines, would it meet the concern, address the concerns of the staff if we said something like typically with multi-story buildings? And then that way it's emphasizing that.
I like that idea without having a target number, but still encouraging the heights.
Okay. How do folks feel about that? Good? Okay, anyone objects to that? No? Why don't you go ahead and make that change? Is there anything else we overlooked? Okay. Hearing none, I think we probably should vote that we want to adopt this as our land use category description. So I'd accept a motion to do that with the suggested amendment.
I move that we accept the land use categories as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? Mr. Lee?
Just a question, whether, I see that all of the explanations describe the areas that they apply to. By accepting the explanations, are we necessarily accepting all of the places that they, okay.
No, we are not.
Sort of an abstract acceptance of the descriptions themselves.
That's
Okay.
right, and coming right up, I think, on the next agenda item, we're gonna talk about places.
Yes, the purpose of accepting the descriptions is so that the committee has the same foundation for the map changes.
Yes.
Just a comment to the staff and all others that aren't here that were working on this. I think a lot of feedback was thrown at you, and I really feel like you really incorporated things really well, and I appreciate the work. It's a great product.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I would second that as well. I thought you did a very good job of incorporating lots of different things that were not necessarily in sequence, and you put them all together pretty well. So we have a first and second to accept. All those in favor, raise your hand. I'll note that it was unanimous. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't vote, okay, well, that's unanimous except for Bilal. You're kind of hidden in the corner, I'm sorry I didn't see you raise your hand. Next, item number 5 on the agenda is a future land use map and boundaries. And this segues right into Adam's discussion. You received in your packet a series of maps that locate land use categories temporarily on the map. You also, any of you who wished, or all of you, were invited and encouraged to submit any changes or adjustments to any boundaries as well. So I had the opportunity to do that. So as you saw in your packet, there were a number of potential suggestions for some changes. And what we'll do is we'll go through those. I tried to pick out an order that I thought made a little sense, trying to, at times, put areas that are together, sort of close to each other. So I'll try to go through that order, not necessarily in the same map order, but Ally will pull them up as I call them, so we can talk about them. So I thought we may start in the north part of the city and up by the lake where the East Auburn School is located. And you can see on the map that colored area there, actually right now in the growth, in the land use map, it's designated as agricultural resource protection. But that's lot is where the school is. So it seems as though it would be appropriate, and I think the water goes right up to the school, is to change it from that area to an area that permits certain development. There might be a couple of reasons for it. In this case, you don't want to have a facility in an area that really isn't designed by its definition for it. Secondly, though we don't know at all, and I have no inside information whatsoever, but the school department has looking at all of its facilities. And when the school population is stable, but maybe getting smaller. Those of you on the council know this very well. So they're looking at the possibility for economies to potentially closing one school. I don't know whether this would be one, but in addition to having a more appropriate zone, we want to think in the future to have it be capable of being redeveloped for other use as well. So I think those are a couple considerations in looking at that. Rick?
I'd also add to that, that even if it does remain as a school, there's sufficient acreage there to do housing back there. The Housing Authority looked at it years ago, actually paid for a survey, and the land's good. I think it's got recreational uses now, but it would be suitable for developments not in the watershed, so.
Now, Jeff?
So I just have a question. In the packet, the suggestion here is to undetermined category. Directly below that, I guess it's tan on yours, it comes up yellow on mine. What is that?
That's the
district?
compact residential.
So, yeah, so would the suggestion be that this parcel that the school's on also be compact residential?
Might make some
Lauren's
sense.
shaking her head yes. I think that's the question. for the
Yeah,
committee.
that seems to be sort of the obvious choice, because it's right adjacent to that choice, and other areas are not adjacent to it. So I think the suggestion would be that land use category be compact residential. There be any other different suggestion in that?
I'm just kind of wondering about this, the way we're going to proceed through these. There's quite a few changes here. I'm not sure if we'll accept them or if we'll reject any of them, but should we vote on them? I don't know if that would make sense to do.
Yeah, we can, yeah, I certainly want to get a sense of the consensus of the group, Dana, for sure. Now, having said that, as we go through this, maybe you'll see some things that change your mind down the road. So if you do, we can come back and take a look at it again if something else suggests what we've tentatively said for right now should maybe be re-examined. Does that work? Okay. All right, so any further discussion in regards to changing East Auburn School to the compact residential? Seeing none, if you're ready for the question, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Anyone opposed? You're opposed? Okay.
Yeah, I question, after all of these months of going through all of these land use categories and trying to determine where we want growth, where we have to, have ag and high density and all of the other things, how we are going around picking out individual parcels of land at this point in time is a little, quite frankly, a little upsetting to me. And some of these other ones that we're going to be talking about tonight, it's like, where were all these suggestions over the last 12 months, or how many months we've been meeting? So I find it a little upsetting. I don't like signaling out one parcel of land and making a change like that.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, so this is the first time we've undertaken this exercise. When we did this before, this is the exact same process we used around the growth zones, right? So we did a preliminary cut of the 3 growth zones, and then everyone had a chance to look at this. We went around, and there was quite a number of adjustments that we made. This is the first time since we've done these land use categories that the staff circulated this, and I guess from my perspective, when I went, I've got a whole stack of these that I submitted to the staff. These are things that, when I looked at it, seemed obvious, because the initial cut of this was just generally taking these land use categories and dropping them on top of existing zoning districts without any real significant detailed look at where these boundaries were. So I think we should have a discussion about all of them, but I can just speak for myself. That's where it came from. When I got the maps from the staff, I went and looked at all these in detail, and understanding what was on these, it seemed to me that there were, we're not changing the growth zones at all. We're just adjusting the land use categories in particular areas, I think, where it will better fit what we're trying to accomplish.
And as Jeff said, this doesn't change the state law in regards to what the density has to be in the growth or where there's water and sewer. That has to stay the same. So it's still having to comply with the law in regards to having 4 units, either if it's in a growth zone and or has water and sewer available to it. In the categories that you saw on the map, I think was explained, were primarily based on existing zoning that we would add, except where we made some changes on that. So this is an opportunity to say, based on the land use descriptions that you just adopted, is this still the appropriate match for these areas? So that's what the process is, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, not upsetting the apple cart necessarily.
And can I add something?
Lauren, yep.
When you're thinking about the appropriate match, there's a balance between thinking of the existing conditions today and what would change in the future. And so you can think about it as preserving an area, enhancing an area, or transforming an area completely. And so you have to balance like what is existing there today with the potential to enhance or transform. To John's point, state legislation is now changing a lot of, preservation is hard in a lot of areas of the city with water and sewer and in a growth area. So when we're thinking about where should the boundaries be, are we enhancing this neighborhood or are we transforming it? And that's how a way to think about it.
Okay. Any more questions? Jane?
Yeah, this is just a question to make sure as I'm looking at the map that I'm understanding. I mean, I'm thinking about what you were saying earlier, John, about so this hatched lot is in fact one discrete lot. Is that right? And it's the lot where East Auburn School is currently located. So all the other yellows here, I assume, are housing lots. Is that? I'm just trying to visualize what. So this is currently ag zoning, but it's not used for agricultural purposes. Do I have all that right? Because it's a school.
So for this actual parcel, I just checked this to make sure that this is correct. This parcel today is suburban residential zoned, and so if you kept the agricultural open space basically designation as you had in your growth area, then you would have to change that zoning from suburban residential to a more restrictive zoning. And so in essence, if you're choosing to go compact residential, in this case, you would be staying more in line with what the current zoning of that parcel is.
This parcel in particular was a catch of perhaps some mapping error that happened over time with zoning.
Jeff?
Yeah, so in this particular instance, we're talking about a singular lot. Most of these, as we go through, as you'll see, aren't. The driver for this, the primary driver for this change is that if the school committee were, so to review how this works, right, under the state law, school departments can only hold land during the time period in which they are actively using it for a school function. And once they stop using it for a school function, it reverts back to the city. And as John said earlier, there is a facilities group as a subgroup of the school committee that's actively looking at school closures, and we know from the discussions at the city council there will be at least one. We don't know where that's going to be, but this is going to come up with Walton as well later on in the map. This parcel, if the school committee were to relinquish control of this parcel, that building would sit there until it rotted into the ground in the ag zone because there's nothing that the city could do with it. So the driver for this is to make this the same characteristic as what borders it. So if the school committee were to change it and it wasn't going to be used for a school function, then the city would have the option of doing something in alignment with compact residential, whereas we could do nothing with it if it was agricultural.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? I think we voted to make the change with Bruce, not Bruce opposed. So let's go to another area. Again, this happens to be a smaller area. It's located along North River Road. It's in that sort of yellowish green color. The suggestion is to move it into neighborhood transition zone. Somebody want to speak or comment to that change? Oh, Hallie.
This was a suggested change from us. We didn't catch the change with these two parcels with the growth area boundaries. This is in the moderate growth area, and we extended the green ag open space land use category down. So this would be converting these two parcels back to their intended growth area category.
Jeff.
Yeah, and folks that are familiar with this area, those are two residential house lots now. There's a currently occupied residence on each of those lots. They're not used for agricultural purposes, as is what's in the green directly above this is active ag land.
Tim, you have a question? No? Any other questions? Further discussion? Does somebody want to make a motion to accept that change for this particular area on the map?
John, can I ask a quick
Sure.
question?
Yeah.
So does the, partly it's, I'm not colorblind, but I sometimes have trouble, making sure I understand the colors. So does this become a land use category that is one of the adjoining, because it's different, right? Okay. Because what we did in the preceding example was we made it align with what it adjoins. Why are we doing it differently here?
Jeff.
As I understand this, and Ally or Lauren can correct me, what this would change to would allow more than the ag area, but less than what you see in this kind of tannish area, right? As a transition between that going to the ag land.
And this is a moderate growth category, so it's in the two growth categories we have for moderate growth are the neighborhood transition or the residential corridor. So we're proposing to align it to the neighborhood transition based on growth area.
Adam? Yep.
And I don't mean this to be actually asserting a policy position, but why did we choose to go with the lesser permissive?
I think that's what Ally's point was, which is this was an error when the maps were drawn, and what you see in the tannish there is a higher growth zone, and so your options of the land use characteristics in the moderate zone wouldn't be what's the tannish peach color there.
Yeah, my question's the why. Why not go with the higher growth zoning there? Since it is adjoining a higher growth zone that's doing the same stuff.
Is there water and sewer there?
That's a good question. I think since it's abutting a higher growth and also a lower growth, that middle makes sense to be moderate. And we're looking for the rationale based on the committee's discussion on why it was put into moderate. I think it was for act as a transition and it has 2 existing house lots. Right now the zoning is ag. So it would take it out of ag and put it in something else. But that's a good question for the committee if they want this to be high growth to low growth. I think staff would recommend a buffer between high and low.
I agree with the buffer, and in answering Adam's question, the city, I can't remember which color's which, but the water and sewer seems to end on the other side of the brook. So it would, and it make it in a transition neighborhood would probably be best.
The pink-ish color under here is parcels within 200 feet of water sewer.
Dana?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with this change. Seems like a slippery slope to start flipping parcels out of the ag zone without a real good reason one way or the other. So I guess that's where I sit on it.
Rick?
I think I'm okay taking it out of the ag zone because I believe there are residential uses on it already. So you're actually making a non-conforming use conforming, which is a good thing. And then by doing it I'm not crazy about these small transition areas, but it is a big difference between, pretty high density and then ag. So, it's a good place to do it.
Tim?
Thank you. It's also, it doesn't meet that primary definition of water and sewer that we talked about for the growth zones in the beginning. So for that reason, and the fact that this was a unintentional error and what we're doing is adjusting back to decisions made in previous meetings, I'm okay with that.
Adam?
Yeah, I think the proximity of the water and sewer is the answer that I needed to be satisfied for why it should be a buffer zone rather than a higher growth.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to change it to neighborhood transition zone?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion about this item? You ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? All in favor except for Dana. Okay. Let's take a look at another area in more closer to the downtown. It's on Minot Avenue and runs up to Court Street, and there's also a section in New Auburn as well. So what, Ally, why don't you describe, at least along Minot Avenue, I'm trying to remember what it was in New Auburn, I don't, but along Minot Avenue, Jeff.
So I don't know, I might be the only one that's lost, but we're not now following the maps that are in the packet. Right, there's an order in the packet. I think it would be easier to follow those, so everyone knows what we're talking about.
Okay. I don't have the map order in front of me.
No, it's the Lake Street and Park Avenue.
Oh, I guess I'm misinterpreting.
I think that's a watershed boundary.
This was another one where there was some discrepancy between current zoning and growth area boundaries. Let me turn this off. So there's areas here that were in, I believe, the mixed use area today, and then to align that with our growth area boundaries, these kind of hatches that you can see through the orange are in the moderate growth area, and this would be an amendment to just align that with the growth area. That was an error on our side to not catch that sooner.
Oh, I have to get to the map that we're on because that's not the one I was looking at. All right, yeah, I see where we're at, I believe, the next map. So this is in an area off Outer Lake Street and Outer Park Avenue, am I right? Yeah, that's the way I see it, okay. I think the, let me get to my map here. Give me a second. Yeah, I think I have it here. So, I think this is a change, suggested change from compact residential to neighborhood transition. Comment on this? Jeff?
Ally, could you go back to where the first screen you showed that had the watershed boundary in a darker color? Yeah, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding what we're talking about. So what's in blue there is the watershed boundary, and the brown around it, that's neighborhood transition today, which is the break between the growth, high growth, and the moderate growth zones. And what's just below that dark brown and kind of the brownish hatch is that's where the moderate growth zone is today, and this is just truing that up to make sure that we're using the correct characteristic to align with what we had for growth zones?
Yes.
Yeah, is everybody oriented to where this is in the city? Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah, the Lake Street side appears to have city services. Because it goes right out through the development with the condos or whatever they are.
So Al, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we raised this before, questioning about where the water and sewer ended there, and my recollection was that you guys went back and looked at that, and that's why this ended up in the moderate zone, because it's actually more than 200 feet beyond where the utilities end in that area. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, these areas do not have the water sewer access.
I'm just looking at the cities on the parcel viewer map, and it has it running right out Lake Street pretty far.
Both water and sewer.
Well, it indicates sewer is in that multifamily development. it seems to be broken, so I don't know how that would be possible, but.
Oh, Dennis, do you have your hand up? No.
So that dark pink is, if I understand what you're showing there now, the darkest pink, those are the parcels that at some point are within 200 feet of water and sewer?
Yes, and that's the most updated data from the Auburn Water and Sewer.
So Paul, just to clarify this, what we see on the city's map viewer isn't the detail layer from Auburn Water and Sewer. And I had the same response that you had earlier when we talked about this and asked staff to go back and verify this with the Water and Sewer District to confirm the status of those lots. And I think what's Ally's showing up there now is after they talked to Mike Broadbent and verified what the actual on-the-ground reality was with water and sewer there.
And that matches what I'm seeing here, so.
So just so we're all clear, that kind of deep pink or purple color represents what?
Parcels within 200 feet of water and sewer. And so the parcels that you see that have no color on them are moderate growth. And we are asking the committee to approve putting the parcels that got chunked into compact residential back into neighborhood transition, into a moderate growth area.
So the white part?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'd move to correct the map from compact residential to neighborhood transition.
Okay.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. And is there additional discussion?
This is just a
Jane?
general thought. I mean, I found this when I was working with these maps earlier today, and it's still the case. It's really hard to read them. And at some point, if whoever is going to be the next reader on these, if you could, because there are clear rationales for the actions that we're taking, and if there's a way that you can just like bullet that somewhere, like on the separate maps that you've provided, both this is why we did this, and this is also what difference it makes, because I kept finding myself as I was looking through these thinking, well, just getting lost in, well, how does this change what can actually be done? So that's just a recommendation for moving forward as these are going to continue to get reviewed by other people.
Adam?
To wit, the impact here of this change is that there are fewer commercial uses, but it doesn't change the housing.
That's correct. It doesn't change the density, I don't believe, of housing, but it does change commercial uses.
Doesn't it always change the growth from high growth to moderate growth?
It would change the density, yes, but it's in a previously agreed upon area by the committee to be in the moderate growth category.
Hmm. And then even in that growth, though, what's the difference is 3 instead of 4?
It's two versus 4, but that's with water and sewer, so.
Hmm. Any other questions in regards to this change? All right, we have a motion and a second. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. We are all in favor except one for now is not. Let me know when you're ready to change your mind. All right, so, oops, my computer, if I don't use it, goes to sleep, unfortunately.
Jane, to your point about justification for decisions, we do have a working document that has tracked the decisions over time. So if you see us frantically scrolling through things right now, that's what we're also looking at.
Oops, sorry, my map is not wanting to stay in place there. All right, so, hey, we are now in the downtown. So this is a suggested change from mixed-use corridor, which is in the striped tan light brown area, to include it with the downtown area. And you can see that towards the top is Court Street that comes through there, and goes up to Lake Street, and there's Minot Avenue, which goes through there, and that was a originally suggested as a mixed-use corridor. So we'll entertain any questions you have about that. I think, as you remember, this is an area where, on the west side of Minot Avenue, you have the old Lounge Shoe Building, a very large structure that's there. The water and sewer is there as well. Of course, it abuts directly to the downtown area. And to the west side is a very steep slope that goes up there to a little high school there. And you can see Elm Street as well. So I think the suggestion is to go a little bit across Court Street and line it up with Hampshire Street and come back down Goss Street. And that kind of pinnacle, I think, that sticks up on the west side is owned by the Auburn Water and Sewer District, as well as a lot below it where they're at. And the thought is to encourage this to develop as an integrated part of our downtown, given the physical boundaries and its adjacency to the downtown. I guess we should talk about the part that's on the bottom here.
Can we separate these and do, because I
Do them
see them
separately?
as
Go
very
ahead.
different, the part up by
Okay.
Court and Union Street bypass
All
and
right.
the part in New Auburn.
I'll just tie a string to that because it is a little different down in the Mill Street area. Go ahead, Joe.
So the top part that John just talked about, I think that for me, the major impetus for this change is that the work that the city's currently involved in with potential redevelopment of that strip does not fit in with the description of the corridor. So it's in conflict with the direction that the city's going in, and the downtown characteristic on that side of the street would be better in alignment with the potential redevelopment.
Adam?
As I'm reading it, it makes it mixed-use neighborhood, or it makes it downtown? Okay,
It makes it downtown.
then I'm reading this wrong.
Yep, it moves it from mixed-use corridor, which is a different definition, to the downtown. And mixed-use corridor you might think of as strip. You'll see these later on Center Street, Minot Avenue, Washington Street. That's generally where they're running. Whoop, where?
Just gonna say, I kind of like the idea. I initially was opposed to it, but then I started thinking about the highway, which bisects our downtown, and, makes it feel like the, Union Street bypass and God, I'm drawing a blank. It goes right by the factory. Anyways, Minot Avenue, lower end of Minot Avenue. It's bisecting neighborhoods, and so if you say it's part of the downtown, maybe that helps with DOT, somewhat. At least being more open to doing things that are neighborhood friendly instead of highway tank and tummy blast through downtown Auburn.
Yeah, and as you'll recall, if you take a look at the current number of uses, there's several restaurants down there, there's banking, financial facilities, and in that particular area, you have that huge lounge shoe building, that something has to happen with that site. Dana?
Would this change also put these pieces of land in the, what are we calling it? Sorry. In the high-density cores section, so outside of the high-growth area, it would be like the highest growth area?
What was your question, Dana?
Well, so inside of our current future land use map, the downtown is marked as a high-density core. And so to me, changing this piece of land to downtown would include it in that high-density core.
I think the high-density core is what is Great Falls Plaza now, and then the downtown is a separate category from our high-density core.
I'm wondering whether we might be putting together two things. One, a narrative of the downtown. It does talk somewhat about being high density, but we do have renamed 3 areas to high density cores, which are those areas in red. One of them is Great Falls, so they're not exactly the same thing.
My mistake. Yeah, I understand. You're right.
Belial.
So, my question has to do with, so that intersection, we're all familiar with Auburn. So when you're coming down Court Street, the bottom of Goff Hill, there's a right-hand turn where the CVS is. My question is, is any of the land turning right on that CVS street? What is it?
Minot Avenue?
No. Goff, yeah. Are any of those parcels going to be downtown? Because I don't think that makes sense to have any of those parcels downtown.
Well, across the street, there's a CVS that abuts on the end of that.
Been included, okay. Is that? I think it's already. It's already included? Okay, so nothing else further, right?
This would change that to downtown. I just turned off the layer so everyone could see what's underneath it.
The apartments are gonna be, or no, those parcels, okay, that's good, yeah.
So it's everything inside of School Street? Except for there's like 3 residential lots there on Goff Street.
Yeah, I don't have the parcel areas I think I'm looking at, so Bruce?
I really don't understand why we're looking to change this. If you look at the definition of mixed-use corridor, Minot Avenue in the area that we're talking about, I mean, fills every single word that we have there. And then if you change it to downtown, then it really looks like it's non-conforming because it doesn't match the downtown description at all. So I don't understand this.
So I'll, from the planning side.
DiCarlo,
Yeah.
you'd like to speak.
So, sorry, I'm a little bit out of practice from being.
That's all right, I'll get you
recognized
back
by
in
the-
practice.
Thank you. Appreciate that, John. One of the things that to keep in mind, this is your highest intensity intersection in the city. And this intersection, when you're having 2 arterials that cross there, you planning best practices is to have your highest intensity uses because it's the most traffic you're ever going to get anywhere in the city. And so usually in a city center, though, that is where your highest buildings usually are. And you usually don't have direct access from those parcels directly at that point. And that's on purpose because if you do have direct access from those parcels, it interrupts your entire traffic flow of the area. And so you'll start seeing things such as like backups from traffic and things like that. And so best practice is to have a bigger form of the building in those areas, which then requires you to have access to those parcels from other places. If you keep it in a mixed use type of deal, you are going to get direct. It will lead to the zoning to have more of a mixed use on that parcel and have more direct access from the streetscape there. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. And then the rest of the parcels, as you're going down, this is your entrance into your downtown. This is your official entrance into your downtown, whether you've marked it that way or not. From the outside coming in, this is where all traffic really slows and you start seeing your physical form of your city. And that has to do with one of the things that we had a public comment before about the topography of the land, and because of the steepness as you're coming into that, any of your changes of elevations from the physical buildings. So you'll notice that even in the mill building that's abandoned, it's several stories high. However, even the top of that building isn't to the bottom of the buildings that are above the hill. And so this is the one area that you can have tall buildings and it won't actually have an impact on the areas around it because of the geography of the land. So those are things just to keep in mind. I'm not pushing you from either way, but I wanted to make sure that you're informed about your decision.
Yeah, thank you, DeCarlo, for informing us about that. Adam?
I think to both Rick and to Carlo's point, the uses there that would be potentially, if done in the future, would be non-conforming if we make this change. I think that's a good thing. I don't think we want any future uses that look like some of the uses that have destroyed that component of our downtown. And so I think the high density is sort of the point. If there are future developments there, they should look more like a downtown development.
Right.
When I was a kid, it was part of the downtown. There was a huge factory where Union Street bypass went, 4 or 5 story brick building. Actually, well, I don't know if it was all brick, but in any event, there was a big factory there. And then on the Minot Avenue west side, where the abandoned police station is, that was a thriving little commercial center. There was CV's, I think Ness Oil moved from downtown to further out, but there were several businesses in that area that I guess it was part of either the highway, the Union Street bypass project, or maybe urban renewal, or both.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Other comments, questions? Tim?
Yeah, just kind of reflecting on this seems to me to really be a good example of we may want to have it look different than it currently does, or expand upon, some of what's really highlighted in the downtown of a little bit higher buildings and things like that. So I think, Bruce, to your point, it doesn't necessarily quite, fit. It could fit in the mixed quarter, but as I look at that mixed quarter, as I read it, there's less emphasis on the taller buildings, and so I think the idea of trying to develop that into a better place, I would support the downtown for that reason, that it's an opportunity for us to move forward in a way that just isn't there yet, and we wish it were. So.
Okay. Any other comment? Questions? I'd entertain a motion to accept the change in the classification. Moved by Adam. There's
Second.
Second. Did I hear a second? Paul, okay. Thank you, Paul. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Oh, wait, you know what? I forgot to hang on to that string for a second, so we'll have to go back for a minute for the New Auburn piece.
We can talk about that.
Well, yeah. So, well, just so we don't skip over it and forget to do it later on. To the bottom side is just a little piece in there that goes along the Androscoggin River. It essentially includes 121 Mill Street and Barker Arms. And the recommendation is consistent with that's more focused as larger structures located in the downtown area and fits better there. I just wanted to say that, and if no one feels as though that's not correct, we can talk about it, and not, we'll stay with the vote we took. Okay? Looks like you're satisfied with that. All right, let's see what our next map is.
Sorry, John, I think I was misunderstanding. I was thinking that we were going to discuss that piece as a separate issue from what we just voted on.
I said we did, and I forgot about it, Tim. Do you want to go back and do that?
Yeah, I think there's...
You do? Okay. I'm sorry I forgot about that. That's why I tried to talk about it before, because I was afraid I was going to do that. All right, so let's go back and talk about that. Okay, thoughts about the New Auburn piece of this downtown change? Jeff?
Just so I may orient myself here, this is the Auburn Housing Authority's Barker Mills, and it's the City Resource Center, right? That's what we're talking about, those two parcels.
I believe that's right.
Yeah, and if you look at sort of the northern end of it, it's fairly undevelopable, steep terrain and such, and that area, it's basically a peninsula. Well, it's not technically a peninsula, but feels like a peninsula. The river sort of loops around that, almost like an island. Not an island either, but point of land, which does have some potential for additional use, and a 4-story, 5-story old mill building.
Okay.
I just
Jane.
point out, it's also an area that the mouth of the Little Androscoggin that has fabulous potential for recreational development.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there were whitewater kayakers who actually tried kayaking successfully during a spring freshet, I guess, with lots of water coming over the dam, and they loved it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, just as Rick pointed out, it's extremely steep. It's hard to imagine anything getting built there, but I've always thought that it was a missed opportunity in terms of recreation and park of some sort.
Okay. Dana?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not necessarily opposed to this change. I just don't understand what this change does for us. Is there a compelling reason to make this change?
Well, I think that what's there now, especially Barker, doesn't fit into a mixed-use corridor. There isn't any corridor here to begin with, and it seems like it's a better fit for downtown than it is for a mixed-use corridor.
Yeah. So if you take a look at the underlying suggested, it's mixed-use corridor, which is the same as Center Street, Minot Avenue, and Washington Street. I think if we take a look at what those streets, how they function and their purpose, this little section that goes up Broad Street is not a major travel thoroughfare. Yeah.
And on the current map, and we're not talking about that right now, but later on in here someplace is the other side of Mill Street, right? So the way this is set up now, it presumes that Mill Street is a corridor, which I don't think it is, and so I think we'll get to the other side. I don't think that should be mixed-use corridor either. I think that should fit in with whatever the residential that it abuts in that particular area.
Any other questions or comments in regards to this little piece of New Auburn becoming part of the downtown designation? All right. I suppose just to be clear, we probably should vote on that. So, Tim, do you want to, are you still comfortable with that being downtown? You want to make a motion to just reaffirm that part of the New Auburn part is part of the downtown?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? I think, anybody opposed? I think it's unanimous. Okay. Let's move along. Oops. Sorry, my cursor keeps moving around. All right, so where are we here? Summer Street. Okay, yep. So this is Summer Street, going from on the right-hand side or the easterly side. It abuts with a portion of Turner Street, and it goes up through Summer Street. Up towards the Mount Auburn area. Not quite that far, but. So, here it is. And the suggestion that it be moved from neighborhood transition to mixed-use neighborhood. Yeah.
So I have a few comments on this. A couple of these areas I submitted comments to staff on. I don't agree with changing this whole area. So let's talk about the northwest side first, which would be the 3 lots, that one right there. So the reason for suggesting this change is that while we're all having these meetings, life isn't standing still, and there's things going on with the city. And there is now an active discussion about extending water and sewer into the area of these lots, right? So if we go back to the principles that we've been using, such as when we talked about down in New Auburn, there may be areas that don't have water and sewer, but if there's active work by the city being done to extend water and sewer, then we should accommodate that. So that's the issue with those lots there, which is there's active discussion of water and sewer expansion and leaving it in the category that it is in today. There would be no basis to extend the water and sewer because you couldn't use it for the development purposes. So that's the northwest side. If you go on the other end, down past it, so what you'll see is that on this end, we did not accommodate fully for the water and sewer when we first did this. And this is kind of an anomaly because in the big lot that just below your cursor, Ally, that lot there, there is now actually a sewer line for there across those other lots to Turner Street with a pumping station that was put in when they developed that. So there is water and sewer service there now, although we didn't pick that up in our initial review of the maps with the water and sewer department. So I think it's the same issue there. We had categorized this as if there wasn't any water and sewer, but now we realize there actually are lots with water and sewer there. The piece in the middle, which is where Horizon Drive is, and then above it, the weird shaped piece right there. I don't think we should change those, because if you're familiar with that area, this, on the side where the weird shaped lot is, there's a very, very steep gully there. It's not really buildable, which is why the high growth area was stopped where it was. And this is all, where you can build in that piece is built out, where Horizon Drive is. And this is in a very steep hollow for which you're not going to connect the water and sewer on each end without significant investment in pumping stations, for which there's no development opportunity in that area. So I would be in favor of the change on each end, but the middle piece, I don't think there's any benefit to changing it.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, I agree with that. I grew up in the area and fished in that brook that runs through Pettingill. Little tiny fish, but very swampy on the upper end, sort of a undevelopable area there, sand pit across the street, very steep terrain. The Edward Little cross-country ski trail used to go up through there, but a lot of rocky outcroppings and just not really suitable for development. So I think that doing either end makes sense.
You want to break this up into two sections, or you want to do it together? What's your preference? One section or the other, or you want to do it all at once?
I'm okay with doing both.
At one time?
There's going to be 3 sections, but it's all one change on either end, so.
Okay.
I just had a clarification, Jeff, in terms of what you're looking at. Oh, maybe they're closing it in and answering the question. So that one lot there, it looks like there's some pretty aggressive terrain there next to that weird shaped lot on the north side. Are you including that in what would be developable or not?
No, I think Ally's got the picture here. She's putting it up on the screen. So where she made the gray, I would say change that. Where you're talking about where the gully and the weird shaped lot is, I wouldn't change that, because I don't see that there's any benefit to changing that middle piece.
Yeah, I think my question was, in that rectangle to the north side of Summer Street, is that terrain that's, at least that I'm seeing there, less steep and problematic?
Yeah, that's actually to the left of that. If you're looking at the screen, it's all relatively flat. That's the back side of the cemetery.
Yeah. Okay. Further questions or comments? So as I would describe what you would change on the lower part again, Jeff? Or what you think?
I think Ally has it.
Oh,
has it marked.
Right, that purple area?
Yeah, it would be the purple area, and I think we could potentially, yeah, I think she has it set up correctly there. It's the purple area that was within 200 feet of a sewer line.
And so the question before us is to change from neighborhood transition to mixed-use neighborhood in those 2 areas that we've just discussed. Tim?
Just out of curiosity, that boomerang shaped is a parcel, is that, well, it's a right-hand corner right there that's separating the two purple areas. Goes in, is that not connect, that wouldn't fit into if we're on the southern end there's two deep purple areas, and then there's this, what I'm calling a boomerang, but it's a right-hand corner.
Yeah, sort of a L-shaped.
Right, is that not connected, or could that not potentially, could we just put that in there?
I think you could put it in. You know, if you're looking at that picture now, the right-hand side of it's within 200 feet, and the left-hand side isn't. It's a very weird shaped piece of parcel. I think you could do it either way.
Oh, I'm sorry, DeCarlo. I gotta have a better swivel on my head.
No, it was good. It was good. You're looking both ways. If you guys are on 50-50, I would recommend including that boomerang parcel on, just for the fact that if not, you'll have a gap on, I believe, Turner Street in your streetscape. And so you want to just keep that consistent if possible.
It certainly abuts the rest of it. All right, is someone ready to make a motion? Oh, Bruce?
I just have a question. So even though there is no water and sewer yet, we are allowed to make this change?
So there is water and sewer on this part. We didn't catch it before because there's a line that runs from Turner Street, and there's actually a pumping station up on the bigger lot that's purple. On the other end, there is no water and sewer, but this is like the discussion we had on South Main Street, where there's active plans, there's work in progress to extend the water and sewer, which is why we would include it. It isn't there today, but there's now active work going on to extend it into that area.
So it's permissible that we can make this change?
Any other questions? Anyone ready for the motion, to make a motion? Tim?
I move that we amend the map to make these changes as discussed.
Okay, is there a second? There's a second from Jeff. Are you ready for the question?
So,
all those in...
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, Bilal?
I just want to be clear about the changes we're making.
Yep.
So if I'm understanding Jeff correctly, we're going to be taking the upper part of Summer Street and the lower part and putting it into the mixed-use neighborhood, and then everything else we're going to be keeping in the compact residential or neighborhood transition. Neighborhood transition, okay.
Yes, so what's not being changed stays as is, and the rest of it is changed to mixed-use neighborhood. Ready for the question? All those in favor, raise your hand. Anyone opposed? I believe another unanimous vote. Yeah. I believe the next section, the next map, is in the Walton School area. Bruce?
So you have this sea of light yellow all around Walton School. Why would you change Walton School to not be conforming with everything that's around it? It doesn't make any sense.
Jeff, yes?
Yeah, so I understand Bruce's point. This is very much the same as the East Auburn school discussion. That this, along with a number of these other school sites, is under consideration for discontinuance of use by the school. And if the school were to do this, and this was in compact residential, there's nothing that we could do with that building because it doesn't fit in with the description of compact residential. So it's really related to potential redevelopment should the school discontinue the use of that as a school.
Other questions?
Jeff, according to the descriptions for compact residential, all right, if there's 11 acres there, and if that property were to be sold, they could develop that and absolutely make it totally conforming to compact residential. There's nothing in compact residential that would keep you from making a multifamily building out of the school, developing lots on the 11 acres. There is nothing that would, but if you change it, now all of a sudden you're adding retail categories, restaurants, and you're changing the entire neighborhood because this land has gone up for sale. So to me, and it was the same thing with East Auburn School, it looks like a ploy to increase the value of the property should the school sell. The other thing it does is it changes the thought process for the school committee and the facilities committee, which is, I'm a member of the school facilities committee. So by taking a property that isn't in the middle of the category that it belongs in and changing it just because it may close is really, it doesn't make any sense to me, and it's quite aggravating.
Jeff?
Yeah, so the proposed change is from the yellow to this tannish peach color that's there. And compact residential, the typical land uses is 1 to 4 family homes on small to medium-sized lots, which is not what that is. And the primary building that's there would not fit into that description of compact residential.
Any other questions, comments?
John, isn't the building grandfathered there? It's sitting there, and it's grandfathered, so it can be redeveloped as a residential facility. It's not like they're building a brand-new building. And it's the same thing with the East Auburn properties. You can use the building, or you can tear it down, and if you tear it down, then you can make it fit what the category is for all of the properties that are surrounding it.
You asked a question to me. I'm not 100% sure I know the answer, so I want to defer on that to someone who might know. But Jeff, you have your hand up. I don't know if DeCarlo, you want to make any comments on it?
Yeah, so my understanding would be that this is a change of use. This is a school today. If it wasn't going to be a school, that you couldn't just say, well, because there's a structure there, I can do something different than what the land use characteristics and what the zoning is going to be that's built off the land use characteristics. So this is, I don't disagree with Bruce that if the school were torn down, then you can build whatever's in that particular, described in that land use characteristic. But the key issue to this is that if the school stops using this and there's a change of use, the issue is impediment of redevelopment of that existing building.
I'm just going to try to restate to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. So I think, Jeff, what you're saying is that if the school were to close and this stayed as compact residential, in order to conform to that land use category, the building would have to be removed and small to medium, or medium, yeah. It currently doesn't, it fits into the mixed neighborhood, but not the compact residential. So if we left it in compact residential, we'd be making a decision that it could still be repurposed, but only by removing the building first.
Yes, and
yeah.
I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that, as we've talked about before, there's not necessarily just going to be one zoning district associated to a particular land use category area. So this is in a very sensitive area. I think we want to make sure that there can be redevelopment of the existing building, so we don't cut that off as a possibility. But this would not be, I don't think you would have zoning in this area that would allow you to turn this into a commercial building, right? That's not why we're doing this. The proposal for this is simply so that you have the option to redevelop what is there.
Adam?
Am I right that the chief difference between the compact housing zone and the mixed use is the permission of 4-family multifamilies versus larger than 4-family multifamilies? Is that accurate?
Well, if you take a look at the rest of the neighborhood, because adjoining that is a mixed use, which goes all the way down to the town center. As you know from that area, there are a number of larger multifamily structures there.
And that's what I'm clarifying is the reason we're doing this is you have a building that could house multifamily in excess of 4 families, and so why leave that on the table by leaving it in the compact?
I would say with the compact, it would be for, based on our density and form, it says this area is characterized by 1 to 4 family homes. So at a minimum, we have to allow 4. And with mixed use, you would have more than 4, and also that commercial aspect as well.
John?
Tim, this way.
I understand the more than 4, Lauren. However, in the mixed use, we also have retail uses, restaurants, cafes, personal services on ground floor sections of buildings. That would be totally non-conforming with that neighborhood. Consequently, I think that's why it's all light yellow around there and why it should stay that way. Because having retail, restaurants, cafes is not conforming with that neighborhood. And I thought that this is what we were supposed to do.
Just a question. I'm sitting here looking
Okay.
at the descriptions, and both compact residential and mixed use allow things like cafes and, small corner stores. So it looks like they're allowed in both categories. And there's also just advice to keep it within the scale of the existing neighborhood, right? I also think there was a florist across from Walton for a long time.
I'm sorry, would you say that again? I didn't catch it.
There was a florist across from Walton, I think on 7th Street for a long time.
Forrest? Yeah. DeCarlo, thank you.
So the discussions that you're getting into now are the meat and potatoes. And these are going to be preferences. And so, unfortunately, there are not going to be some hard and fast rules of what you should be doing with this. It is going to be your preference and what you believe is it's going to be in the best use in the next 10 years. As a reminder, this is your plan going forward for the next 10 years where you would like to occur. And so just keep that in mind. And sometimes you're not going to get consensus on these things, and that's okay because you're a body.
Rick?
I guess my biggest concern would be, if the school were to be decommissioned, I would hate to see it torn down. You look at Webster School, and it was left vacant for a time, and it wasn't heated, so there was internal damage, but it was redeveloped into 28 really nice apartments. It's a historic property. I think Walton's could be in that same category. And Webster was a bomb shelter. I wouldn't be surprised if Walton was a bomb shelter. So those kind of buildings, you can't build those today. So it would definitely be worth keeping in some future, reuse.
John?
Tim?
I think it was Jeff who mentioned that zonings could be different. I wonder if this was to be part of the mixed-use neighborhood, could there be some zoning that limited certain types of commercial businesses so that it did have, or in some way to encourage that the redevelopment does stay within the feel of this neighborhood, which would be desirable. But that might be, I mean, because I share the concerns, Bruce, that you have. Like, you wouldn't want a commercial use that just really doesn't fit in that neighborhood, but perhaps that could be addressed through some zoning. Is that possible?
Along that line, let me ask the question, and this follows up with there could be some modifications to the particular zoning, even though the underlying district description might be the same. So would there be a possibility, for example, that this parcel might have an overlay on it, and that overlay would describe more what would be permitted for the redevelopment of that building, so that would be consistent with something like the redevelopment of Webster School?
I'm probably going to go against the grain on this one. So if you are thinking of having special protections on a single parcel, I would suggest that you make some mention of that in your comprehensive plan, so you avoid spot zoning, any spot zoning concerns. But it's totally possible to do either way. When we're talking about the reuse of buildings, that is basically in your zoning ordinance. That's a little bit more detailed than the discussions that you guys are getting in tonight. But you can have provisions on either end for the reuse of structures. I've seen it in other jurisdictions. And then the last thing I'll say about this site, because it's such a large parcel, you can have transitions between the surrounding neighborhoods and then this actual larger structure, if the structure is going to stay in place. That is about, you can even see, if you're seeing on your screen, if you would be able to see an aerial, is that there's already a pattern, of street pattern that would be infill. Would you be able to do infill as far as creating blocks, a system of blocks, and you would not even be able to see the larger building from the larger neighborhood. So there's multiple things that you can do at this site, but those are discussions at the zoning scale and not necessarily at this larger land use scale.
Dana, I'll come to you after, Bruce.
Yeah, so I've thought about this one a lot because I live pretty close to it. The one thing that I think makes sense to move this to mixed-use neighborhood is that as compact residential, my fear in redeveloping Walton School in a compact residential pattern would probably mean, likely, that somebody would come in and subdivide this into a lot of smaller lots, And I mean, that would be fine, but I think it's kind of a special lot as it is. There's not a lot of these in Auburn. If this were to be redeveloped in some way that isn't a school, kind of excited to see what it could be. Not sure what it would be. Could be a lot of things. And so let's see what we can get, you know? I think that's where I'm at with it.
Bruce, I think you wanted to speak.
Well, I just wanted to answer that gentleman that,
Mr. DiCarlo?
to me, this looks like spot zoning. This, you know, to me, this is the definition of spot zoning.
All right, we got
This is in
several.
response. This is
Riley.
again not zoning. This is the plan, the zone is separate. And also to answer a question that Tim asked earlier, we're not, as on the planning board, when we did a lot of the form-based code zones, we were doing that in an aim to reduce the number of zones that Auburn had, because there was so many different types of zones. So I don't know that making a new zone would actually be an option, but if there was a current zone that fit that description, maybe. But again, it's not zoning. This is, zone stays in place. If there were to be any changes, we would be referencing the comp plan to make those changes. But as of right now, could you pull up the current zone right now?
It's urban residential right now, on the cusp of T42.
And both T42 allows for small business and urban residential does as well too. So right now that zone still allows for both those things either way.
DiCarlo, you wanted to comment?
I was just, you all have said everything that I was going to bring up, so there was no reason for me to keep my hand up. Bruce has said some things, and so has Riley as well. This is going to be just your preference. The reason, Riley has already seen it, but that the reason why it wouldn't be spot zoning is because spot zoning refers to the change in zoning, and the only way to get out of spot zoning is actually to make a change in your comprehensive plan now. That's just from conceptual level, but from the actual land use categories level, this would border that other zone, and so it wouldn't be in a sea of different yellow. It would be connecting to that other portion. I don't know if you could bring that up so you can show that as well. So it would be a connecting piece. It can go either way, and this is under the assumption that this school is going to close during this next 10 years. So there's a lot of assumptions going on for this particular piece of land. I also want to mention that because you have so much residential all around this particular piece of land, that I would challenge you all to think about public amenities if the school was to close. This is a public amenity today, and the school being there actually provides benefits to the surrounding community. And so if this school will go away, to think about what other amenities you would want to replace that, because if it's just only residential, then you are putting more pressure on your other public amenities in other places. So just think about that when we are talking about reuse of these buildings, just in a general sense.
Okay, thank you. Dennis?
Yeah, I can see why, to Bruce, it appears like it's a spot kind of a thing. And what I wonder about is, what is the motivation? It wouldn't look so much like that if it hadn't been drawn to just connect where the school property comes up and abuts the street there, and if those other properties had been included in the different use category. Was it mixed use? I wonder what what was the motivation to preserve those in the current use?
Yeah.
So I think the motivation in suggesting this was focusing this on the redevelopment opportunity of the school. when I sent this into staff, I didn't suggest any of those abutting properties because they're already in compact residential. We could have that discussion, but the sole purpose for suggesting this was to make sure we preserved appropriate redevelopment opportunities in that zone. John, if I could just go back to try to answer a question Tim asked here a few minutes ago. I think we're going to get as a committee into a discussion about compact residential and mixed-use neighborhood here at some point about where some of those things that are described would be appropriately placed in those zones, right? Because we talk, as an example, we talk about mixed use and we have a bunch of different retail type things that you might use. And everything in that mixed-use zone isn't equal, right? Not all the streets are the same size. Not all the streets have on-street parking. So I think that you can have these mixed-use zones and talk about, for some of those things that are listed, some characteristics that you want to be present to guide the intensity of those uses within, say, the mixed use or the compact residential, right? I would not be in favor of saying, hey, we got a mixed use zone and everything's equal and there's not any further guidance about placement of some of those types of non-residential uses within the zone.
Jane?
I guess I'm thinking about Dennis's comment, and a different way to think about this is to make the suggestion that the block of mixed use ought to just be expanded so that it comes all the way to the end and then down to 136, so that the whole of that chunk would be uniform. I mean, because as somebody who lives in this neighborhood, it's very hard to say that you see anything particularly strong, visual or built that marks that boundary. And I'm pretty sure that there are several small businesses along 136 that are probably in that. I know there's some automotive businesses down there. Anyhow, it's just a suggestion. It would create something consistent to make that whole block mixed use.
Bilal?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted, so two things that are on my mind right now. So one was something that Bruce mentioned earlier about the potential, answering to potential entities and what they may do in the future. I think we as a committee should really, I'd caution against that. I mean, we don't have to answer to any entity other than ourselves and of course the city, and we owe it to ourselves and the public, honestly, to have that foresight of what we want for the community, not based on any particular entity whatsoever. So I would agree with that sentiment. Secondly, I'd say that obviously from a lot of the public feedback that we've received from the public, there's been a lot of need for equity in terms of public access to green space, and Walton has much of that. I know I spent a lot of summers playing soccer there, just like community groups that would utilize the field just outside the school. And so, picturing the community as it is now, I think it would make sense for us to keep it in character with what it is now, and that would be similar to the description of what the compact residential is, right? We have smaller units per lot and neighborhood businesses and that type of environment. And so that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. And I understand the potential that we could have if it were to redevelop, but we don't, we're acting on hypothesis, like if it were closed. And I don't think we should kind of really get out of that headspace, frankly.
Yeah.
Yes, I can respond to that. I think it's just the opposite of what you're saying, Bilal. My point is, we have this building there, we could redevelop that, and I would not be in favor of compact residential and say, rip this building down and drive streets through it and just carve it up into a bunch of small houses. I think we would be losing a lot of value in that neighborhood, right? So we want to make sure we position this so we have the option to redevelop the building and maintain the track and the field and the open space that's there. There is no other open space in that whole area there. So that's the motivation for this, is to make sure we can redevelop that existing building. And then, as with any of these, as the manager knows, when these come across from the school, there's a whole public process about defining in detail what would happen to a particular parcel and what would be entailed in the redevelopment.
Dana?
So regardless of what we do here for the future land use map, when we get to the policies and goals section of this, it's clear that since we first started talking about that section in this committee, that there's been a discussion about possibly closing a school. And I think DeCarlo was spot on at one point saying that, like, we should probably add something in that policies and goals section someplace, wherever it's appropriate, saying what we intend as a committee to happen when a school is closed. I just think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Adam?
Toward that end, because I think we're all sort of talking around the same policy goal, which is to maintain those buildings and put them to their highest maximum use and to preserve the green space that is created by them.
Yes, Paul.
I'm on Jeff's page with, I think, the getting it out of the compact and putting it in the mixed use is probably going to steer it in that direction, for more flexibility with what can be done there. And I do like, I know Dennis kind of started the squaring off the lots and stuff like that. Jane's makes sense. I don't know what those lots look like down there. It's a pretty big hill though, right? So it's probably not gonna, those lots towards the River Road is probably not gonna change much there, but those 4 that are out front of the building, that could easily change.
I'd like to just maybe underline and comment on what was said earlier in regards to the ownership of the building. That property is currently owned by the City of Auburn. It's being used as a school, has been for a long time. Should it not be used, state statute requires that the property reverts back to the city. The city then, as the owner, can describe what they want that development to be, as long as the underlying zoning allows that to happen. That's a critical piece. There's a difference between saying what it is, the zoning is, and what the owner of any property ultimately wants to do. In this case, you control both ends. You control the land use requirements, and this city will control it as the owner as well. And requests for proposals can go out and say, this is what we want. If you want to bid on it, this is what we want you to do. And so you could meet much of the goals I heard you talk about here, to preserve it in such a way that continues to enhance and provides a benefit to the community and doesn't revert to something that the community does not want to do. Are we getting close to ready to, well, I'm trying in my own mind to figure out what sort of the list of choices are. Keep it as it is. Change it to mixed-use residential for that property, maybe with a strong statement, as DeCarlo might have suggested, that this is, if doing that, this is what our intention was in doing that. Expanding it to larger area, so that it encompasses more mixed use and not just that parcel. Help me out. Any other suggestions? Rick?
I think we should also have some statement in there that we're not in any way trying to influence the committee that's going to, determine the future use of schools, in my opinion.
No.
Walton School is a fine school. It's an old school, but it's got lots of land, nice facilities, and you see, look at Portland High School. It's older than Walton. And so, and I'm not saying that it should be preserved, and another one should be, eliminated, but we're just trying to plan for it. We're not trying to influence in any way.
Okay. Are we at the point where we're prepared to have a motion and act on that motion? Does somebody have a motion? It's a tough, I know this is a tough one. Adam?
I'm moving the cost low expansion theory.
Well,
Motion.
I'm sorry, what did you move?
I'll second that.
Jane's suggestion to move it to mixed use, residential, and expand the space all the way down to 136.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Well, Jane,
Jane, seconds, okay. Dana?
would that include the two parcels on the corner of 7th and Mary Carroll? They're currently mixed, they're currently multifamily, I think both of them.
They're multifamily.
Multifamily, yeah.
I mean, rather large multifamily, I think.
Yeah, the motion does.
So move it from starting at 7th Street towards 136.
Just the street frontage?
I thought she meant go all the way over to the back line of
Yeah, I was just
school
going to make
property.
it consistent.
Oh, I'm sorry. How?
Correct, right.
That look like it, Jane? Yep, okay.
Ignore my line work here.
It's a chainsaw, and she'll go with the scalpel later.
The
All right,
online version
so we
doesn't
have
let me follow
we
line.
have a motion to make the changes you see on the map from compact residential to mixed use within that area that's been outlined. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, all those opposed. 2 opposed, whoops. 2 opposed, then all the, I'll include myself in favor of it. So, all but 2 are in favor.
I'd just like to reinforce the comments in the plan, including what Rick mentioned, that this is to help explain that this is really just to provide as many options as possible is a really wise idea.
Yeah. And the intention was to include the discussion that the preference for it is for residential development? Is that part of the intention, or you're not making that part of it? No? Riley?
If I understood what Dana was suggesting is that not necessarily attached to this change, but in the larger document, we say that the preference for any decommissioned city-owned property is that the building that exists be reused as opposed, so not just this change, but any school building.
Okay. And I think Dana suggested that we double check our policies, see if that's in there.
And my current point with Rick's, what he added, I think is a really important one, is that this is not to preclude the role of the facilities committee. It's really just to say we're setting this up so that when and which school, if that happens, is decommissioned, then we are prepared to be able to use this site.
Yeah.
So can I get some clarification about Riley's comment? Because what I heard was that the city was going to redevelop any city-owned property. And the city gets properties all the time that need to be torn down. They're derelict buildings. They're not sufficient for redevelopment. So, and we're not going to know with these schools, even if we limit it to schools, what happens if they close a school and the structural engineer goes in there and said, we should have looked at this 10 years ago, you can't build on this thing, you got to rip it down. So I think that we could have some softer language relative to schools, that the intent of the committee is that if the schools are returned to the city, that the city use them, redevelop them in a way that provides a community benefit or something along those lines. So we're not boxing ourselves into buildings that we really shouldn't redevelop.
Riley.
Yeah, so my comment was after we voted. So the vote was just for the change, but my suggestion was as a separate discussion, and maybe my wording wasn't how it should have been, but that the city's preference is that existing structures, if they are sold from the city to another, I guess there's no way to enforce it, but the preference would be that the original structure be used. If an engineer says it can't be, then it can't be, and that's that. But I think that would be a way to suggest a preference by the city that those buildings stand.
And again, is that any building?
I would say ones with historical significance. And again, I'm not coming up with a wordsmith right now. I'm not trying to put this to a vote. Maybe it's a discussion we can have and work out better wording. But yeah, I would say anything with historical significance would be preferred, that the structure be utilized if sold to a different.
The manager may want to weigh in on this, because I understand your idea and I'm supportive of the concept. I think this gets in a very slippery slope. Central Fire Station is existing. Technically, that could have been reused at a much, much higher price to the city. So we don't want to box ourselves in some of these things. So I get the sentiment, and I appreciate the thought that we have to wordsmith this, because I think we're really going to have to think about this so we don't put ourselves in a position that down the road we have a complaint that says, well, you can't do this because it's adverse to the comp plan.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, Bill, please.
I think what I think I understand what the intent that Riley's looking for. I think staff could draft some language that we bring back in a future policy language that the committee could take a look at, because I think the mayor's correct. I mean, when we take a look at old churches, we take a look at mills, we're constantly looking at these, and I want to make sure. I think Riley's comment was the preference would be, which helps in that, but let's just wordsmith that and we'll bring it back to the committee.
Okay. Good, we'll look forward to that. Thank you, Phil. Lauren?
It's been wordsmithed, and you'll see it in your policies packet tomorrow.
We'll smith it right off the bat here.
It's been in there, don't worry.
Okay. So that brings us to the next map. This is an area in the general area, residential area. Lake Street neighborhood, along Lake Street, Gamage Avenue, Field Avenue, that kind of thing. The idea is to move this from mixed-use neighborhood to compact residential neighborhood, which currently the underlying is, all of this is mixed-use neighborhood currently. maybe I'll begin the discussion by saying I took the opportunity once again to go around and actually physically drive every one of these streets this past week, to clarify my mind just exactly what was a neighborhood, what was the physical structure of the neighborhood, what was there, what were the roads like, what were the sidewalks like in this area, how big were the lots, etc. Now, these boundaries aren't exact. I think they're a beginning, but if you take a look at this area, what you are going to find is that they're predominantly single-family homes on residential streets, and it's pretty much the same on whether you're on, trying to get my direction, whether you're on the Field Avenue side going towards the park, you're on the Lake Street side going forward. The major difference, I think, here is the use, and a number of you have spoken to the uses. The mixed-use residential allows for much broader and larger uses, commercial uses, including things like sit-down restaurants in that area. It specifically allows retail activity within that, particularly on the first floors, and a lot more commercial kind of description. And also it describes larger, bigger buildings with maybe 4 stories or more with multifamily housing. I think this is the opportunity to take a look at what these neighborhoods are. Now, one of the things I noticed is that at least 50% of the area here has no sidewalks at all in that area. More on the outside areas than in the center, but most of them don't have that. Many of the roads don't have construction, not built for street parking. If people do park, say a friend, neighbor come, on some of these streets, you're blocking one of the lanes. You have to go around it, which if it's just somebody visiting for a while, it's not an inconvenience. If it's a commercial activity and they're staying for a period of time, that's a different story. Certainly think cafes would be good, corner stores would be good, encourage local businesses that serve the neighborhood would be good, have in-home childcare would be good. So I think there are a number of things that could do that, but I think it's quite distinct from what you see as you move towards the core, where you have larger buildings closer together with more commercial use. My thought, this would be the time to discuss if this is an appropriate area for compact residential that reflects what the neighborhood is. And incidentally, just to remind ourselves again, under state law, you still have to allow, you have to allow 4 residential units on a 5,000 square foot area. So that doesn't change the fact that there's going to be a growth area, or change the fact that there's going to be opportunity for different kinds of housing, including some multifamily housing or duplexes and the like. I think the major question for us is this an area where larger commercial uses really fit into these kinds of neighborhoods? So that's why it's on the map to discuss. Open it up to questions, comments. Adam.
Guess I just push back on the nature of this neighborhood as primarily single-family units. I think there's a whole lot of multifamily units mixed amongst those buildings that look perhaps from the outside as single families, but there's a ton of multifamily units in there. I know that from walking the neighborhood, doing doors, and just generally living in that neighborhood. I would be reluctant to remove it from that. I think it's in sort of our core neighborhood where we want to build density. So I would be opposed to this.
Riley?
To be clear, though, this wouldn't change the density because it is attached to water and sewer, so by state law, we'd still have to have 4 units. This would just be addressing the potential commercial uses, right?
That's correct. Dana?
Yeah, I mean, this section of town is in the geographic center of the city, and I think it doesn't make sense to me to lessen the development opportunity of some of the most valuable land in the entire city. And I mean, I think everything Adam said is completely correct.
Yeah.
So I guess my thoughts go back to what I said a few minutes ago, and I think this is something staff is going to have to help the committee with. So in these areas like this, the big differential is the intensity and scale of commercial activities that's allowed amongst the residential. And I think a lot of these decisions between compact residential and mixed-use residential, I need to get a better understanding of, is it one size fits all? Is there guidance about how the intensity is placed amongst these zones? Because I think that's going to be the question on any of the places between mixed use and compact residential. It's the scale and intensity of commercial activity in those areas.
Jane?
So these are the same 2 categories that we were just talking about relative to Walton. And I'm just sort of struck that, I mean, I don't know this section of town as well, but I just used my Google, Google Maps to do a little drive-through. It strikes me that the average lot size in this section of town is larger. And that the major difference, I mean, I can't speak to the multifamily thing, but that they're just bigger lots. And it looks like the economics of this part of town may be somewhat different from parts of New Auburn. I mean, when we were talking about New Auburn, we just thought that we wanted to be appropriate to the neighborhood in terms of whatever commercial activity is there. I guess I just don't see why we would treat this section differently.
Adam?
I'd also sort of push us back to some of the early discussions we had when this committee first started. Was many of the younger people in our city are saying the options for things like going to walk to a restaurant or going to walk to places where they can shop are missing in a lot of our neighborhoods. And this is one of the prime spaces that we would have young families moving to. And shutting off the opportunities to give them a chance to do all those things without getting in a vehicle seems misguided. And I think that's precisely the kind of development we want in an area of town like this.
Riley?
I just want to circle back, and so that is all T 4.2, correct? Which does allow for some small businesses and walk neighborhoods, just prohibits larger scale restaurants that require parking lots. And so I think that this change does afford us the ability to have smaller local businesses, but also restrict any of the larger scale things that I agree that I don't think it matches at least what's currently there.
Any other discussion? Jeff?
Yeah, so I have mixed thoughts on this. I think the first thing I would say is I don't think this committee should be necessarily relying on 4.2 and 4.2B, since the community was adversely against those changes. There was a citizen's petition that rolled it back, and the city council changed 5 words in the ordinance and came back 2 weeks later and change the ordinance. So I think, again, this is about intensity and scale. What's allowed today in 4.2B is pick a residential neighborhood. I have these same concerns about New Auburn and some of the areas between the compact and the mixed use. What we're talking about here is we're not talking about, you know, a cafe with 2 tables with 8 seats and a counter. We're talking about 30-seat restaurants with no requirement for off-street parking. And I think some of these more intense uses are entirely appropriate through all of these zones. But there's places in here where those types of intense uses aren't necessarily appropriate. And I think we need to think about, in the compact residential and the mixed use, we want these things that Adam's talking about, but we need to make sure the intensity and scale is appropriate within those zones, right? Because, you know, if you're off on some dead-end side street in these residential neighborhoods of single-family houses, the road has 2 lanes, there's no on-street parking there, and there's, you know, 18 houses on this road. Putting something that's going to have 30, 40, 50 cars attracted to it doesn't fit in that part of the zone. So somehow we need to reconcile better where these things are going. We want the mixed use, but we need to think about, again, the intensity of scale and where we place them. I don't know, the staff is way better trained in this than I. That's my thought, and there's probably an answer to this that I might be all wet, and we should talk about it.
Paul?
So the southeast corner with the 2 larger lots, that's Lake Street School, right? Right on the corner. So that neighborhood is fully sidewalked. Plenty of parking on the side of the road. Well, I shouldn't say plenty, but the streets are generally wider. You probably, I mean, I'm not predicting, but where you're going to put a business is not at the top of Orchard Street or something. It's probably going to be on Lake Street or Gamage Avenue, getting over there where it's sidewalked and the streets are wider. If there are larger lots, you would have to, you would probably put parking in anyway. I'm just saying it's not as scary as it sounds to allow this stuff in there. Sometimes it's just not practical.
John, I have a few thoughts about this and just how we're thinking about it. I think there's, on one end, it is the commercial use, so the intensity of the businesses, and it's also, we'll have that density regardless, and it's how that density will look. And so is where the city can have municipal control over setbacks and lot size, or not lot size, but setbacks and from the street and so on. And so back to my earlier point, and we were talking about converting part of a mixed-use corridor to downtown, how much change does the committee want in these neighborhoods? Because if the large swath, as it stands now, if that's mixed-use residential, you're transforming many areas of the city. And if that's the intent of the committee, mixed-use residential makes sense in certain areas. But if these neighborhoods will be enhanced no matter what, they'll change. But you'll be altering a lot of neighborhoods by making this mixed-use residential. And so that's the difference with the compact, is how much change are you comfortable with? And so some committee members might feel really comfortable with all of these changes throughout this swath of the city. Others might not, because given the context of the current existing built environment, does it lend itself to that much change? That's the question.
Thank you, Lauren. I've lived in this neighborhood for more than 40 years. Kids grew up here. I know it like the back of my hand. I would push back against the suggestion that there's massive amounts of multifamily, but it doesn't matter, because under state law, there's going to be requirements for residential development. I'm not opposed to that on lots. I also know, and you can take a look at the plot plan, many of those lots, if not most of them, are small lots, not much more than 5,000 square feet, about enough for a single-family home. Some of you know that because you live there yourself to do that. There's a few lots where somebody might have bought the lot next door and just kept it because they wanted extra space. But there's not a wide amount of big lots to be developed. The central issue is this neighborhood really constructed without much of the sidewalks in many of those areas? To have the intensity of commercial use that is permitted under a mixed-use neighborhood. If you don't think that that is appropriate, just simply saying people are not going to do it doesn't mean they can't legally do it. Those are two different things. I think it's the scale of those commercial uses are much different than a coffee shop, which would be great. I love coffee myself. Than a 30-seat restaurant that could be located there. It would make quite a dramatic change in an area where the type of housing there is primarily family housing, and it's going to grow to more than that, which is fine because we need the housing and we need more rental units to do that. But I don't think that we should be encouraging larger scale commercial areas in a neighborhood that has never been built for that, nor does it have the ability to support it there from a structural point of view.
Just to have, I think,
the other thing that I'm a little uncomfortable about this is the map isn't really drawn as I would have drawn it, because I think the area can be constricted more than that. But as a general, I don't think the idea was to say this was the only place you could do this, but a beginning of the discussion. And I actually think, which is going to be difficult to do, is that some of those lines should be changed somewhat. And at this point, when you're talking about a large area like that, it's going to be difficult to do that. What I'd like to do is have a chance to do that and come back and look at something that can justify a smaller footprint, but allow for some additional mixed-use neighborhood that's adjacent to that, because I'm not opposed to it. And actually, looking at the time that we have here, I don't think we're going to finish this by tonight. What I'd like to do is, if you would grant me the opportunity, is to table this one and come back with a map that's much more specific, that you can see difference. Because I think we're going to have to do some more work on this at another meeting. Is there any objection to doing it that way? Take a more clearer look at it and then make a decision?
So are you trying to break up this lot or this area into?
I think it needs to be much better defined. I think it's too large. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just at the place where, we've been discussing this future land use map since, January. This is the first time I think we've discussed this. I mean, Bruce hit this at the beginning of the meeting. I mean, this is we've discussed this area quite a bit. There's just so many parcels. I mean, I guess if you're gonna narrow it down, that's one thing. But at this point, we're looking at, I don't know, at a close glance, what is that, 100 parcels? Probably more. I mean, it's just a lot to just broad swath change at the last time we're looking at this.
We have not been looking at land use category maps since January. We've been looking at growth zones and a lot of other aspects, but that, to me, in my mind, is very different than a land use category. So I think I'm okay with setting this aside and coming back to it, but there's a lot of valid points. I hear people say that there's plenty of sidewalks going up to Park Ave. There are 3 entrances to walkable streets up to the back of Park Ave. One of them doesn't have any sidewalks. 2 of them have a single sidewalk on one side of the road. If you're driving down Granite Ave, there are sidewalks on both sides of the road, and it's just like John described. If there's a car parked, if it's any size truck, it's blocking the road. So I think we just need to come back, and I'd love some help from the staff to be looking at that rationally. Is it constructed in the way that it meets and what zone should work? So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who's first or second here. How about Dennis?
Okay. I'm fine with tabling it, but I think the real problem is it's kind of naturally chosen itself. If you look at the area where Lake Street and Park Street and Gamage Avenue all come together in that little triangle, we have a business that has been there for years and years. First it was a small market, now it's a cafe or a food store. And that's naturally, I think, the only place in that whole area, that corner, where there's sidewalks going to it, and you could actually do something more intensive. But the kind of mapping we're doing isn't really suitable for that. So any suggestions to improve that would be great. But I think it's the nature of the exercise we're involved in that makes it hard to do.
Yeah.
In the interest of time here, I would suggest that we table this, and it's not just this one. If I'm looking at the staff paper under this heading of mixed-use neighborhood to compact residential, there's 3 maps. I suppose we're going to have the exact same discussion with every one of these areas. I would suggest we move on from those, and perhaps the staff can think about this some with their expertise and come back with some thoughts on this. And I know John and maybe others want to look at this in more detail. So I would skip those 3 in the interest of time and take those up as the first item when we meet at the next meeting.
I have a question from staff perspective. I'm totally on board with looking at this closer and having staff input on areas that make sense. I'm curious about, our perspective of transformation versus non-transformation and so on. I'm curious what comfortableness the committee has, because that will dictate, the existing form will dictate those lines as well, but the question still remains of how much change. We can bring you multiple different options of existing conditions combined with a lot of change, et cetera, et cetera.
Adam?
This may be terrible direction, because I think what I have is sort of like a fundamental philosophical question. We're talking about so many portions of this area don't have sidewalks. In my, dream vision of our city, every single portion of that would have a sidewalk, and there would be substantially more on-street parking throughout those neighborhoods. And so I could use some direction to us, whether in providing this portion of the document, whether we're reflecting what the city looks like now or what we want the city to look like.
Well, Jeff?
Yeah, so I'm a little less philosophical than Adam is on this. I understand the point. I think that there's some practical reality that we're going to be talking about many streets in these 3 maps that are in this, and I think the practical reality of saying let's go through and add sidewalks and on-street parking to all of those isn't anything that's going to happen in the scope of this. I do think that there's a presumption of transformation. At the baseline, there's a presumption in the state statute that there'll be more intense residential uses in these neighborhoods, so they're going to change. I do think there's an expectation that in those areas, that there be allowance for neighborhood-type businesses. Again, I think it's this, so I think we should be thinking of transformation of those, because there's going to be the ability to do things that haven't been there before, and I'm fine with that. To me, again, it gets down to what's the scale, and I think that's what we need to think about. Is you know, I would be opposed to saying that, you know, we should eliminate all these types of things with retail, but on the other hand, I think we're going to get huge pushback from the community, because we've seen it before. If we start talking about business or retail uses that are of a larger scale and a more intense use, meaning intense use of the resources, the parking, the hours, and those types of things. So I think we need to have transformation, but we need to think about what that looks like.
Just to respond to the question about, you know, looking for the future, I mean, if we were going to make if we had the ability, let me put it that way, without a taxpayer revolt, to make those kind of infrastructures in place, wide enough streets that somebody could park on them, sidewalks that were passable and went to all of these neighborhoods. Some of these neighborhoods have been there since 1920s. There was no sidewalk, never been built. Whole neighborhoods, no sidewalks. 2-lane roads, 9 feet wide on each side so the car can get by. No parking. So, yes, I want it to grow. Yes, I want to encourage appropriate growth. Yes, I want more affordable housing. But I think it has to be consistent with what we have available to support it, as far as infrastructure. And we don't have it. And any suggestion that this is going to happen in 10 years is an absolute fantasy. Will not happen. Because there's not money in the budget and never was. Adam?
We're a democracy, and the city council's job is to do those practical questions from my perspective.
Yes, and the democracy will say, why are you raising my taxes so much?
To the city council, not to this organization.
Yeah, well.
But remember, the city council is going to have an opportunity to review this document.
Yeah. So, the suggestion...
John, if I may, to respond to your question, Laura, I kind of look at it as the practical need and the projections, right? So the need is housing. We've seen the reports. We see the type of housing that's needed. I haven't heard a whole lot of, we really need a lot of local restaurants. That's economically driven. That's going to be economically driven by whoever wants to build those things. And some of that stuff, like these ideals, I would love it, but I'm not sure that's really what is going to come here to Auburn. I mean, you barely see it in Portland. We can try to build some of those things. I just don't know that that's, in addition to the pushback we would get people from these neighborhoods. Is that really where we want our restaurants? Or we have 3 high density zones that we're hoping to be able to grow, and is it better to have it there? Like, so for me, that's part of what I'm looking at, is I don't know that really, if we inventoried everyone in this neighborhood, that they'd really want these local small cafes on every corner. Could it be walkable? Yes. Do the vast majority of people in this city and this state drive? Yes. Driving to a grocery store 5 minutes down the hill from my house, I'm closer to grocery stores in my 25 years in Maine than I ever was when I was growing up. It was a 20-minute drive from any, so I just think, I don't know how realistic that is. It's great to have it in the aspiration if it wants to be built, but I don't know that we're really, I guess this gets back to what Dennis was saying, that some of these areas, I don't know that it's really worth trying to force that kind of change, because I don't know that it's desired.
Phil?
I think this is a great spot to stop. I think that when you take a look at this map, just this vision of this map, I think 5 or 6 members around this room live in this map area. So there's no one better to understand where you're currently living, what does it look like for the future, and spend that time before the next meeting to really come back with, I think, you know, Steve talked about, this is a great opportunity to kind of walk this neighborhood. 6 of you live right in here. So I think you have a really good sense of what is the neighborhood like? What would they like to see? You know, I think about a project that we did not too long ago up near Bruce where they voted against the sidewalk. You know, they didn't want it. So there's, you know, we're going to have that push and pull, you know, within the neighborhood. And I think about Lake Street when they did the complete street change on Lake Street, and there was a business and a home that created parking havoc that you know, as chief, I must have handled 30, 40 complaints regarding parking on that Lake Street because of what that created in there. It took time. It took time for the neighborhood to adjust and to recognize, and then people got used to it. And I don't think we receive any complaints now regarding that type of home occupation. And so don't have a better group to really take a look at this because 6 of you live in here. And so you have a good sense of it, and I think that gives a good opportunity to come back and talk about what it should look like.
Okay. I think Phil has a good...
Unless I'm mistaken, we're actually talking about 3 different parts of the city, though. When I made my comments earlier, I'd actually gone Google driving along Fairview because this change impacts, it's Lake Street and then Fairview and then outer New Auburn. So I agree with Phil, but it's actually 3 different neighborhoods. And yeah, I mean, just to point that out.
That is correct, and there's other neighborhoods beyond that. So I think Phil has a good point. I'm not wishing to cut off conversation, but I think if it's best that it'd be useful to table this and then come back to it, and let's try to finish up some of the others that we have. Oh, DiCarlo.
So I'm just actually supporting Phil's point in going back in and actually looking at this neighborhood and allowing yourself the time. The only thing I would add onto that is to imagine what else would be needed for these neighborhoods to accommodate the increased amount of growth that we are going to be required to allow there. Today, there are single-family homes. What if the amount of people were tripled? And that is a low estimate. And so thinking about all those type of things.
Dana?
Yeah, so the other thing, I guess, I'm fine tabling it, but John, you had mentioned that you weren't necessarily happy with the boundaries here. Is there anything that we should add to this in our thoughts and deliberations, or places that you think that we should remove?
There's some you mean far as mixed-use neighborhood? I think there's parts that we could add to that.
Right. So I think it'd be helpful to just see what those look like.
So at this point, would someone be willing to make a motion to table until the next meeting? Adam?
Move to table.
Okay. Second? It's not a debatable item. All those in favor? All those opposed? I think it's all in favor with Dana opposed. Oops. All right, what's the next map?
John, I have a comment to make. Hello?
Okay, go ahead while I'm trying to get to the right map.
Perhaps we table all map discussion until next Tuesday. Rick likes that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to that idea. How do we get to that? We could either, if it's a committee's desire, we can just pull them out and say, these are the ones, and we can do that. Or we can just scroll down and say, here's another one, shall we table this one? So I'm happy to go in either direction. But I'm timid about going in directions that I haven't gotten any sense which way they want to go. Jeff?
So I don't think there's anybody here that was expecting to stay past 9 PM. If you were, raise your hand. Okay, so we got 15 minutes left, and I'm scrolling down through these, and there might be one that we could dispose of in the next 10 minutes. But some of these, even though I think the committee will ultimately agree, is going to take some time to explain what the map is and the rationale behind it. So, you know, we could simply make a motion to adjourn, and Lauren's telling me no, but
Well, we got a couple other things.
we don't have to go through every one of these things and table them. We could just put them on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also have some concerns for staff that if we were to change what that map looks like, it may actually affect other items that we vote on. So I would make a motion to table all remaining map items in the agenda.
Okay. And as I suggested earlier, we're going to come back to look at it again to see if we created some unexpected.
So I would second that, because I think Lauren doesn't want to adjourn because
You know,
she wants to do some other business.
yes, we got a little other business to do. All right, so the motion is to table all of the remaining maps until the next meeting. That's not, a tabling item is not debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Looks unanimous. All right, so. Policy updates is item 6 on the agenda. Lauren, I think that you were going to make remarks on that item.
The moment you've all been waiting for, our comprehensive plan policies, finally. So I'm going to give a brief presentation to set you up for the packet you're going to receive tomorrow. For our next Tuesday meeting, we are aiming to discuss the policies section. We will still try to do so alongside the future land use map, but we'll see how that goes. But it's ready for you, so you will get that tomorrow. Oh, I'm using my computer. So I just want to talk through the timeline of the policies, kind of how we structured them, how we worked through them, because it's been quite some time since the committee has had a chance to look at the policies. So in November, we started with our comprehensive plan subcommittee meetings. That's where we met, I think, about 5 times to kind of lay the groundwork and the foundation for the intent of the policy section. In December and January, then the CPC committee met again, and then there was also a city department meeting at the end of December. And then in February and March, we had those meetings with the city department and city committees and boards that you were invited to discuss each topic area. And you'll see the address. At this point, we have a structure change. So the policies document that you saw in December is going to look different, significantly different than the document you're going to receive tomorrow. Another reason for this presentation. So then in April and May, the document went through staff level review and refinement. I'm going to walk through each of these timeline items. Next. So this was the comprehensive plan subcommittee meetings in November and December. We had 2 different groups, the natural environment, community, parks and rec, housing, economy, transportation. We left land use and infrastructure off the table until we had constructed a future land use map. So you'll see those in your packet tomorrow. And those, we met in November and early December for those. So then in December, there was a meeting with city departments. And the goal for this meeting was to comment on this draft of the policies and action items, and to make sure that the actions are clear and specific, achievable, actionable, measurable, and also taking one of the following actions on those action items. So is it good and should be included? Is it not achievable, and comments as to why not? The action item should be modified with comments on how to modify it, and that they should be included with an explanation. So the city departments went through that process at the end of December. And so then we had our city departments and city committee and board meetings in February and March to further refine, because our document was very, very large and still quite vague, something we wanted to narrow it down and make it as specific as possible. And so the meetings were broken up by each of the goals, and we met for about 2 hours with each of those groups. So the goal of these meetings was to do a detailed review of the policies and actions to make them as specific and strategic as possible, which lended itself to a restructuring of the policies section. So we started with this. This is just a screen grab from our draft of the policy section in December to something that looks like this. And so you'll see the goal at the top, which is the goal from the vision statement. And then it's broken into policies, objectives, and actions. And so during the meetings in February and March, staff and city departments looked at, and boards and committees looked at, how can we make the intent of the comprehensive plan committee's work and put it into a way that actually city staff can work with, and that's readable and usable. And so we had seen some previous examples of this policy, objectives, action structure that made the original document a little bit more tangible. And so you'll see this in your packet tomorrow. And so for April and May, we had some foundational principles as staff. So questions we asked ourselves, and as we went through each action item, we asked these questions of each one. Is the city already doing this? What plans have already been made or need to be made that the city can look into? So you'll see in your document, and this was talked about a lot in committee meetings and community engagement, the city does a lot of stuff, and we have plans. We've been planning, we're doing studies, and so on. So you'll see that the comprehensive plan actions lean on those already established or ongoing current plans or studies. And another question we asked, is this even a municipal lever that the city can use? Some of the action items weren't things that the city has control over. It's often organizations within the community that would do the action items. And so you'll see partner with organizations quite a bit throughout the document because the city itself didn't have that lever to pull. One big question was, can we even pay for this in the next 10 years? And so if an action item was taken out or modified, it was for that reason. It's financially infeasible over the next 10 years. And does this overlap with other items? And so there were quite a few redundancies among sections, which is natural because everything is interconnected. And so we did our best to try to reduce those redundancies down. And so hopefully there are action items that connect to one another, but don't say exactly the same thing. And so one last question we asked was, what can be carried over from our previous comprehensive plans and our 2019 strategic plan? And so we looked through and that document to see what have we already done, what do we want to continue doing, what's in alignment with the intent of the comp plan committee, that maybe that wasn't an action item that they considered, but it was a really good one in the strategic plan, let's include that. So we went through that process. And so when you're looking through this document, ask yourselves those same questions of, was this removed for a financial reason? Is it municipal control? And so on. So again, it was structured to ensure that intent and outcomes created by you in November and December are accomplished over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And also I wanted to add that the structure rechange actually aligns with our 2010 and 2021 comp plan and 2019 strategic plan. In both of those documents, you have a larger goal that's then broken to an objective that's then broken into another strategy. So this comprehensive plan actually aligns with previous planning documents from the city. And that's my spiel for you.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. Thank you very much. I'd like to just underline that by saying that we looked at all of the thoughtful suggestions that this committee gave in that sessions that we had for policies, and looked at where they were in relationship to objectives and policies to see how they fit in the process. So we considered those, or they were considered in this process that we went forward on. I think one of the important things to remember about the work that we do is that we all have put a lot of work into this, and we want this not to be a comprehensive plan that rests on a bookshelf somewhere. That would have been a waste of our time. So it's structured very specifically, and you'll see it in the action items, that says this is what needs to get done, and this is who's responsible for getting it done, and this is the time period. And you shall report back to the city council annually on the progress that you make. And it was important to involve the administrative staff here, who are going to be charged with implementing the product that's ultimately adopted. And with as much clarity and specificity, so that both they know what's expected, but even more importantly, that the policymakers and the public know what is expected. So the process here was to make this a document that will be the guiding document for this community for 10 years and will be looked at and worked on annually and reported back to the city council to see what has been achieved and what is left to be done, and what the plan is to complete the other items. That's why it's in this structure.
And I'll just add, I really welcome committee feedback on this document. So if there are things that you find were excluded, please let us know, because that can happen sometimes in these review processes. And so I welcome that input. I'm excited for the conversation. So we'll talk about this at the Tuesday meeting and then segue into our schedule for the next little bit. There will be many weeks, not just a week to review these, but weeks to review the policy document.
Yeah, that's correct. This isn't next week. This is your only chance. Not at all. That's the beginning of the process. This is actually a pretty substantial document. It'll take some time, and we'll take the time that we need to do that. So it's a process that you know, that you feel comfortable with, the end product, but as importantly, the public feels comfortable about it as well. And if it takes a little more time, that's what we'll do, which is a segue into Ally, who is looking at the calendar going forward.
So we talked a little bit about upcoming activities at our last meeting, but essentially have 3 components to complete with the plan. The first being finalizing land use category boundaries and policies and actions, kind of as 1 and 2, and the third being reviewing the final document. At next week's meeting, we'll be looking at map edits again, and then starting to discuss policies, objectives, and actions. We're proposing a second June meeting on June 10th. That's a Wednesday, as another meeting to review policies and actions. And depending on how far we get over the next 2 meetings, using the regularly scheduled June meeting to continue review of policies, objectives, and actions. If we need that meeting, can certainly have that. If we don't need that meeting, we'd only have 1 meeting in June, on June 10th. Barry Dunn needs about 4 weeks to put together complete final plan that includes any narrative updates or anything that would come out of those policy discussions and map boundary, future land use map changes, and then to put together kind of a graphically designed document, need a little bit of time to pull that together. So if we need 2 meetings in June, would likely have our regularly scheduled meeting in July only, and use that to start review process for the plan, and then have at least 2 meetings for the committee to review that plan. After that, that would then go to planning board, city council for a joint workshop to introduce the plan, and then 2 meetings, planned for 2 meetings for the planning board to review that document, refer that to city council, and then 2 meetings for city council. The state requires a 30-day public hearing for the comprehensive plan before city council can vote to adopt that. So that builds in about a month of time between city council meetings to vote on adoption for that plan.
Lauren.
So I'll just summarize. So we'll meet again next Tuesday, and we'll meet again on the 10th, June 10th. And if we get to all of the future land use map and the policies, objectives, actions by June 10th, we won't meet again at our regularly scheduled June meeting. If we need the June meeting, we'll use it to finalize things. Just pushes our weeks back a bit, so that's kind of what we're thinking. So we either have one more meeting, 2 more meetings, or 3 more meetings before you get the final document.
Any questions of Ally or Lauren?
Question about
Yes.
the June meeting. Is it going to be regularly scheduled, like from 6 to 9, or are we going to adjust the time to make sure that we actually get through what we have to get through to not meet later on in June? That makes sense.
I would recommend you planned 6 to 9. If we don't use it, wonderful. If we need it, it'll be there. We have to keep it moving forward. We'd hoped that we might be I've been infected by one of our optimists on the team, but over there, but I think it's going to stretch a little bit longer than I'd hoped it'd be more towards the end of summer. It'll probably be closer to early fall.
Like, I'm fine, like, I guess I should say, like, if the committee needs to meet longer than 9, like,
I think after 3 hours, we're not doing our best work.
If you think some of my latest comments were irritable, you don't want to see me at 10 o'clock.
So that next meeting is next week, May 26th, right here, 6 o'clock. I'll entertain a motion. What?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Beal, I'll make an exception for you because you come every time.
I think you probably want to reschedule anything that you just indicated would be done on June 10th, because that's the day after Election Day. The 9th would normally be the planning board meeting, and I suspect that the planning board would be
I think we're I think. Yeah, they moved it to the week after. Yeah. 16th, I have it on my calendar, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We've contemplated that. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? All in favor? Unanimous.